A cabinet secretary spent $220 million of public money to appear on horseback in front of Mount Rushmore, and then told Congress that Trump himself had authorized the whole thing. What happened in the next 48 hours changed everything. Trump was furious, and Kristi Noem became the first secretary fired in his second term. Stay until the end because this story runs deeper than it seems. Hit like and subscribe to the channel. Kristi Noem spent 13 months leading the Department of Homeland Security, treated as one of the most loyal and visible figures in the Trump administration. She was the face of the toughest immigration policy in years. She appeared in cinematic videos alongside ICE agents, visited the El Salvador prison known as Psaki to record threats aimed at undocumented immigrants, and oversaw operations that resulted in mass deportations across the country. She was, at least on the surface, exactly the kind of enforcer Trump wanted inside the cabinet. But there is one political principle that never changes, regardless of who is in power. When you spend taxpayer money at a scale of hundreds of millions of dollars, you had better have every bit of political cover you need before putting your face at the center of the campaign. The Department of Homeland Security contracted an advertising campaign of approximately $220 million with the stated goal of persuading undocumented immigrants to voluntarily self-deport. In theory, that is a public policy initiative. In practice, what Congress and the press found was something quite different. High-production videos, dramatic soundtracks, professional lighting, and Kristi Noem in the starring role, riding a horse, wearing a cowboy hat, posing in front of national monuments. This was not a government campaign. It was personal public relations material funded by the American taxpayer. And it doesn't stop there. The company contracted to produce this campaign, according to reporting by CBS News, was incorporated just 8 days before receiving the contract. It is a firm registered under the name of a political operative from Virginia with ties to the National Republican Congressional Committee. There was no competitive bidding, no transparent process. The money simply went there quickly, without scrutiny, and without public accountability. When Senator John Kennedy, a Republican from Louisiana and a Trump ally, began questioning Noem during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on Tuesday, he was not playing political opposition. He was asking the questions any responsible legislator would have to ask when confronted with spending of that magnitude. And the answer Noem gave in that moment was the trigger that set everything else in motion. Noem told Senator Kennedy that yes, President Trump had approved the campaign in advance. She said everything was done within legal processes, that it had gone through proper channels, that the president knew and had given his sign-off. That answer was either an inconvenient truth she chose to expose publicly or a desperate maneuver to spread political responsibility at the moment she felt the ground slipping beneath her feet. Either way, it was a mistake with immediate consequences. When Noem's statement reached the White House, the reaction was swift and unambiguous. A White House official told NBC News in absolutely unmistakable terms, the president did not authorize a $220 million advertising campaign. Absolutely not. Trump, in a phone interview with Reuters, was even more direct. I didn't know anything about this. Senator Kennedy, after speaking with the president, told the press that Trump was, in his own words, mad as a hornet. Sources inside the administration described the president as enraged and furious. Trump began calling Republican senators during the same week as the hearing, asking about potential replacements for Noem and signaling that the decision was already all but made. This reveals something important about the power dynamics inside this administration. Trump tolerates a lot. He tolerates public controversies, tolerates criticism from the media, tolerates tense congressional testimony. What he does not tolerate, and this has been consistent throughout his political history, is being publicly placed in a position of accountability for decisions he doesn't want to own. When Noem told Congress that Trump had approved that massive spending, she transferred the political weight directly onto the president in front of an audience that includes Republican senators who are increasingly uncomfortable with government expenditures. But Noam's firing cannot be reduced to a single hearing moment. The situation had deteriorated long before. In January of this year, two American citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, were killed by federal agents during immigration operations in Minneapolis. Noam not only defended the operations, she classified the victims as domestic terrorists who had been planning to kill federal agents. That statement directly contradicted video footage available in real time and generated bipartisan outrage. Republican senators reported that requests for updates and meetings with the department went unanswered. Emergency relief to states hit by natural disasters was being delayed for reasons no one could adequately explain. The relationship between DHS and the Coast Guard had deteriorated to the point where reports emerged about a government aircraft pilot being removed from duty for failing to transfer a specific blanket during a trip. Corey Lewandowski, Noam's senior advisor and a longtime figure in Trump's orbit, was also removed from the department. Trump had called him after the Tuesday hearing, in a conversation described by sources as heated, questioning specifically Lewandowski's role in contracting decisions within DHS. What becomes clear in this picture is that the problem with Noam was not ideological. She did not diverge from Trump on policy. The problem was operational and political. She had become a liability, a burden, a figure generating negative headlines, alienating Republican allies in Congress, creating embarrassments at hearings, and, at the most critical moment, publicly distributing financial responsibility onto the president rather than absorbing it herself. The firing of Kristi Noem raises questions that go far beyond the individual trajectory of one cabinet secretary. It is a mirror of the current state of the Trump administration's immigration policy, and the reflection is not flattering. Throughout the entire first year of Trump's second term, immigration was presented as the administration's signature victory. Deportations were touted with pride. ICE operations in cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, and Minneapolis were displayed as demonstrations of strength and commitment to the campaign promise. Noam was the face of that strategy, filmed alongside armed agents, traveling to foreign prisons, appearing in Hollywood-style advertising campaigns. The problem is that the political reality began moving in the opposite direction. Opinion polls published in recent weeks show a consistent decline in public support for the way the administration is handling immigration policy. The deaths of two American citizens on the streets of Minneapolis during federal operations could not be suppressed or explained in any politically acceptable way. The public labeling of those victims as domestic terrorists by the secretary herself deepened the damage. Trump, with his sharp political instincts, recognized that Noam had turned into an obstacle to the narrative he needs to sustain. In announcing the firing on Truth Social, he was careful to praise her. She served well, spectacular results at the border, while simultaneously removing her. And by designating Senator Markwayne Mullin of Oklahoma as her replacement, he sent a signal to Congress. I want someone from my legislative circle, someone who understands the internal political dynamics and who won't expose me in Senate hearings. Noam, for her part, was not simply discarded. Trump nominated her for a new role. Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas, a new hemispheric security initiative he plans to formally announce in Doral, Florida. This is a political cushion, a way of saying you're out of the cabinet, but you're still here, still on the team, no rupture. But don't be fooled by the smoothness of the transition. What happened this week was a firing driven by management failure, by indefensible public spending, by no-bid contracting, and by a public statement that contradicted the president before Congress. The fact that none of these problems generated immediate legal consequences for those involved says a great deal about how the accountability system functions, or doesn't, inside this administration. And the $220 million contract handed to a company created 8 days before receiving public money without a competitive process to produce videos that looked more like political campaign material than official government communication, that point deserves serious and independent investigation. not as an exercise in political opposition, but as a basic requirement of transparency in the use of American taxpayer money. The question that remains and that Congress needs to answer is not just why Noam was fired. It is why that contract was approved in the first place. It is who signed off on it. It is who benefited. And if the answers to those questions do come, whatever they may be, the American public deserves to hear them. If you made it this far, you know this story is about more than a simple cabinet firing. It's about public money, accountability, and how power works behind the scenes in Washington. Hit like if this content brought you something valuable, subscribe to the channel to follow the next breakdowns, and tell me in the comments, do you believe Kristi Noem was fired for genuine incompetence, or was she simply the scapegoat for a policy that was starting to lose public support?